So, very good morning to all. My name is Amir, and I welcome you all to the fifth and the last day of our Wildlife Week webinar series. So, we had some interesting talks so far. We have heard about our Antarctic program, our natural heritage sites. We had a dive in the life of frugivorous birds, and yesterday we had a session on human-wildlife conflict, the challenges and the opportunities which it comes with. And you can find all those talks on our YouTube channel. So moving forward today, we have for you a very unique session on wildlife laws and policies. And to talk about the same, we have with us Mr. Rohit Jha. And speaking about Rohit, if we talk about Rohit, Rohit is a trained wildlife biologist with 6 years of field experience in research and conservation. He is currently an independent ecologist. He has worked with organizations such as BNHS and WI in the past. His primary interest lies in working towards deciphering ecological aspects and contributing to the conservation of lesser known species in the threatened ecosystems. This has propelled him to study Bengal florican, a threatened grassland dependent bird, and Indian skimmer, a threatened wetland dependent bird, in his past and ongoing engagements. As per Rohit, he doesn't practice any religion, but he considers himself a constitutionalist. He possesses a keen interest in the politics of ecology and conservation and is very curious, I must say, ever curious to know what influences the framing of various laws and rules and policies in the wildlife and environmental realm, and how these find implementation on the ground by variously motivated actors. So I once again welcome you, Rohit. We have been looking forward to this talk of yours. And to the people who are joining us live, please drop your comments, suggestions, and questions if you have on our YouTube chat box. So we will take them in the end. So yeah, over to you, Rohit. The floor is all yours. Yeah, you are live.
Thank you very much, Amir, and thank you very much, Dr. Shiv Kumar, to talk about something which is not usual. When we celebrate wildlife, we usually talk about the beautiful animals that inhabit our country and the world, but we generally do not quite give enough attention to the systems and processes and laws and rules and regulations and policies that govern them. We live in a polity of nations. So there are, and we live in a republic. So there are laws that govern each and every aspect of our life, whether we like it or not. So with this, I'll just share my screen and begin my presentation. Is it visible, Amir?
Yes, Rohit. It is visible.
Okay, great. So I'll also begin with a disclaimer. As Amir also mentioned in the introduction, I am a trained as well as practicing ecologist. It's just that I have a keen interest in law and policy as well. So this is a disclaimer. I'm not an expert, but I thought that this is an important topic to speak about. And the only saving grace for me in this regard is that I have enrolled myself into a diploma program in animal law with NALSAR, and the degree might come in some time. So that is the only saving grace. With this disclaimer, I begin this talk. So law, as I said, law governs each and every aspect of our life, whether we are aware of it or whether we are not conscious. So similarly, why wildlife law, and what is the genesis of wildlife law? So over a period of time, independent nations realized that economic well-being is, of course, what most politicians like and people aspire for: economic well-being and economic security. But over a period of time, they realized that any country's economic security is inextricably linked to its ecological security, and that is how a global movement for to protect wildlife and to conserve wildlife, forests, natural resources began. It's mostly in the 20th century and ongoing in the 21st century. In fact, in the 21st century, a big push has been given through international conventions as well. So with respect to India, we have had a very long history of living in in harmony with wildlife, and if not in harmony, at least tolerant towards wildlife. So our great emperors of the past, Ashoka and Akbar, in their empires, they had certain wildlife or animal welfare laws in their kingdom. Kautilya's Arthashastra, which is a treatise of war, it references to protection of elephants. So of course, these are all the Arthashastra is of course a utilitarian manual, and talks about elephants in a utilitarian sense to protect elephants, to conserve elephant habitat forests, so that the war machinery can be can last for the empire, and new conquests can be made. But Emperor Ashoka's was slightly different. He also has a mixed past. He had a mixed legacy. So he also engaged in emperor expansion, but over a period of time, he realized or he converted to Buddhism and adopted values that Buddhism espouses, which is respect to each and every life form, and that is how his kingdom was one of the first kingdoms in the world, I would say, that specifically adopted animal welfare and animal protection laws, even if his citizenry might have objected to him, he stuck with it. So as I said, we have had a history of tolerance, cohabitation, and mutual existence. This is due to our long cultural and religious heritage of the Indian subcontinent that we live in. So for example, in this picture you can see this is a Vagoba temple in Maharashtra. So the deity here is the leopard, which is kind of worshipped in this place. And there are countless examples. We need not go in detail. Everyone is aware of it. But as far as legislation is concerned, even in that we have a history. Most of it concerns with British India, and most of it again was due to utilitarian purposes. I mean, the British, the colonial empire was not interested in actual preservation of animals. Even where it was interested in preservation of animals, it was with the focus to preserve them for game hunting, and of course for war as well. So there is Madras Wild Elephant Preservation Act, is Indian Forest Act 1878. Then there is the Elephant Preservation Act, Wild Birds Protection Act, and many such other acts. What is significant is that in this chronology, what is significant is that the Healy National Park, which we now know as the Jim Corbett National Park, was the first protected area as such, which was established in 1936. It was established under the United Provinces National Parks Act. It was not a Government of India Act. And after that, of course, we gained independence in 1947. We adopted the constitution which is in force today in 1949, and the Republic of India came into being in 1950. What was the turning point? The turning point happened in 1972, when the United Nations first called a conference on the human environment in Stockholm, in Sweden. So this is 10 years after Rachel Carson had produced her book Silent Springs, which is considered as one of the first progenitors of environmental movement. So there is when 1972 is when a new era of global cooperation on environmental issues began. This is what paved the way for the concept of sustainable development, and even the birth of United Nations Environment Program, which today sponsors a lot of projects in countries all over the world. Now, what is significant from the Indian perspective is that India's head of executive, not head of state, but head of executive, Srimati Indira Gandhi, she was the only head of executive to attend the conference apart from the host himself, the Prime Minister of Sweden. So this is very significant. The conference was attended by more than 100 delegates from countries all over the world, but among head of executives, only Indira Gandhi went as the Prime Minister of India. She also gave a rousing speech there, which connected poverty with environmental goals, and some of it is applicable and which is reflected even in today's international conventions. And it is recognized that poverty cannot be environmental goals cannot be achieved if poverty is not eliminated. Anyway, so India demonstrated her intent to protect wildlife. After this conference, India enacted Wildlife Protection Act 1972 and a slew of other environment related acts such as Air Act, Water Act, Environment Protection Act, Forest Conservation Act, and many such others. We do not have the time to go through each and every legislation, but I just wanted to place an emphasis on the turning point of wildlife and environmental governance in the world and in our country as well. The Wildlife Protection Act 1972 is significant in more ways than one. It was the first wildlife focused act, one of the first at least, anywhere in the world. Even the Endangered Species Act of the United States came in only after a year later. Even the first international convention or a global multinational treaty on protection of any endangered species for that matter, which is CITES, Convention on International Trade of Endangered Species, came into being in 1973, a year later. So India was ahead of its times. But so what is the present constitutional framework that we have? We had a look at the history, we had a look at the turning point, Stockholm Conference, and now we look at the present constitutional framework that talks about wildlife and environment. Now this is also interesting. Many of us may have come across Articles 51AG and Article 48A. But the thing is, these articles were not originally in the Constitution. Our framers, I guess, had a lot of issues to deal with. We were dealing with the twin horrors of colonialism and partition at the time of our birth. So our framers did not quite have the vision or the time to incorporate environment and forest concerns into the original Constitution. But through an amendment in 1976, 42nd Amendment into the Constitution, fundamental duty in the form of Article 51AG was inserted, which gave a duty. Which says that each and every citizen of this country has the duty, fundamental duty in fact, to protect and improve the environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, and wildlife, and to have compassion for all living creatures. So this is very significant. It came in 1976. In the same amendment, directive principles of state policy in the form of Article 48A was introduced, which said that the state shall endeavor to protect and improve the environment and to safeguard the wildlife of the country. Now we must remember that both these Article 51AG and Article 48A are unenforceable in court because these are not fundamental rights. Fundamental duty is also unenforceable, as is directive principles. It only guides the policy of the state. When I say state, the definition of state in this particular context is not state government. It is any government. So a state is any government as defined in Article 12 of the Constitution. So anyway, but even if we discount the fact that these were introduced later, there is something which was always there from the beginning, which is Article 21, right to life. So this is a fundamental right. So this is enforceable in court. You can petition the Supreme Court directly to ask for its continuation, as well as if someone has hampered upon your fundamental right, you can directly go to the Supreme Court. So this is a very, very significant right. So right to life has been interpreted in a very expansive manner by our Supreme Court. You know that the job of interpreting the Constitution is of the Supreme Court and of Supreme Court only. So yes, so the right to life says that it's so right to life is a fundamental life. But what courts have said in one of its judgments, Supreme Court said that enjoyment of life and its attainment, including their right to life with human dignity, encompasses within its ambit the protection and preservation of environment, ecological balance, free from pollution of air, water, sanitation, without which life cannot be enjoyed. So your right to life is hampered if you are living in a polluted environment, and which is why you can directly petition the Supreme Court if that is so, and you can ask for remediation. So yes, so another thing that happened in the 70s was that forest and wildlife as a subject was moved to the concurrent list. Previously, it was in the state list, and hence there were a multitude of state-specific laws that governed forest and wildlife. But now it was moved into the concurrent list of the Constitution, which we know. So by doing this, even the Parliament now could exercise its powers to legislate on the subject of forest and wildlife, which it did in the decades since. So what was before WLPA 1972? As I said, there was some history. There were several laws. There were several state-specific laws. There were several utilitarian laws. But even before that, when India gained its independence, India did form an Indian Board for Wildlife, which was its first move, we could say, towards of independent India towards focusing on wildlife. So this was an advisory body. Its job was to advise the government of India on topics related to wildlife conservation. There were only 5 national parks then. Hunting was permitted. Hunting for sport was even encouraged as a means to earn foreign reserves, foreign exchange. So there used to be full page advertisements in newspapers in India as well as in abroad, sponsored by the government of India or various state governments, to attract people from elsewhere, people from within the country, royalty and other rich people, as well as from outside the country, to come and hunt in India. And it was a means to earn foreign exchange, as I said. We should not forget that hunting was also carried out by local population. It's a tradition since thousands of years, but it was mainly for nutrition and not for sport. But hunting for sport was encouraged. What happened because of this is that wildlife and habitats rapidly started decreasing. This is all before 1972 I am talking about, although you could argue that wildlife and habitats are still decreasing, but we'll keep it for another day. So wildlife and habitats were rapidly decreasing then, because there was no centrally governing institution or law that even regulated it. So what WLPA did is that it consolidated all existing animal protection laws. It reframed the state policy towards wildlife. So now the attitude of the state was not that we should earn money from wildlife, or we should hunt wildlife. The attitude now became transformed overnight almost towards conservation. So penalty provisions were updated into other laws that existed. So penalty provisions were updated, and then there are some salient features of the law itself. It provides, as I said, protection of wild animals, birds, and plants with a view to ensuring the ecological and environmental security of the country. Now, this is very important. This is in its introduction. It is its statement of object. It is very important. Every law has an introduction. It has a background. It is all stated in the piece of law. So even if you read WLPA's background, it states in its laws. It states in its first page that wildlife has been decreasing, animals and birds populations are declining, and thus the government of India is enacting Wildlife Protection Act with a view to ensure the protection of wild animals and birds. Interestingly, fun fact, plants were not included in the first draft. I mean, in the first original law, plants were not included at all. It is only later, I think in 1993, that through an amendment, the word plants first found its mention, and it was mentioned in the Schedule 6 as well. So anyway, so this is how. So of course, the law has progressed from 1972. It has undergone many amendments. So these idiosyncrasies existed before. They have been slowly ironed out. See, one of the most important feature of the wildlife law is that hunting is prohibited. It is not banned. Unlike what we usually assume, hunting is prohibited. It is not banned. So hunting can still be carried out, and we will come to the definition of hunting itself later, and in what circumstances can hunting be carried out. So one of the most important things it did was it provided provisions for the establishment of protected areas. There were only two in the first law. I mean, in the original law, national parks and sanctuaries. There were closed areas as well, something called as closed areas. These were taken out in a later amendment. So establishment of protected areas of various kinds. Now, the most recent amendment also introduced two new kinds of protected areas apart from national parks and sanctuaries that we all know, and those are community reserves and conservation reserves. The main difference between these two kinds, which on the one hand national parks and sanctuaries, and on the other community and conservation reserves, is that this provides a more flexible way of governance, and provides for the involvement of local communities into the governance of these reserves. And these are usually patches of land connecting to large national parks, corridors, and areas like that, which have multiple users, which have multiple owners, and thus these strict protection laws that are applicable to sanctuaries and national parks cannot really be applied, but still they have conservation value. So these are designated as community and conservation reserves. National parks and sanctuaries, on the other hand, are one of the more strictly protected categories. Even in those, national parks is what is the highest category of protection, and sanctuaries come next. Some of the key differences between national parks and sanctuaries is that in a national park, rights have to be extinguished. Any right of local communities or of any person, of any business, has to be extinguished. It is unmaintainable when the national park is notified. In sanctuaries, certain rights are permitted. Of course, this is in discussion and in consultation of the chief wildlife warden of the state and the district collectors. So in a sanctuary, grazing can be permitted. Not necessarily be permitted, but can be permitted. It depends on the decision of the chief wildlife warden. He or she can designate certain areas, all areas, or no area at all in a sanctuary for grazing. So these are some of the very key differences. Another kind of protected area which was introduced in 2006 was tiger reserves. But these tiger reserves are, as we all know, there are more than 50 now in the country. Whether these are actual protected areas or not, we do not know, because they derive most of their protection from their original designation as either national parks or sanctuaries. Tiger reserves as such are administrative units which are managed and run and funded by the National Tiger Conservation Authority. So yes, it established, the WLPA of course established many governing institutions and structures. For example, the offices of the Chief Wildlife Warden in all states of the country, then the office of the Additional Director General Forest, and governing structures. It has 6 schedules. The most important or the most endangered species are placed in Schedule 1, and Part 2 of the Schedule 2, these have the highest amount of protection. No matter where they are found, whether be inside protected area or outside, they remain protected, and the toughest of punishments it can attract if you have harmed animal in these schedules. Schedules 3 Animals in schedules 3 and 4 are also protected, but their hunting or their teasing or their harm has slightly lower penalties. Schedule 5 are vermin animals which can be hunted without permit, and these include crows, fruit bats, rats, and I think some other animals. Schedule 6 is for plants, endangered and threatened plants. So yes, there are certain nuances in the Wildlife Act, and this is what I wanted my talk to mainly focus on, because I did not want it to be heavy with legal terms and be overbearing on the listener. You can listen it as a podcast also. So these are certain definitions that ecologists should be aware of, even citizenry, normal citizens should be aware of. Since these are definitions, I will just read it out so that I don't make a mistake myself. And it is very interesting. All these, in the first bullet point, all these terms have been defined in the Wildlife Act, and all these terms, whether we like it or not, have mean separate. It signifies separate things in the Wildlife Act. So animal is not equal to wild animal, is not equal to captive animal, of course, but is not equal to scheduled animals. These are all different terms. So I'll just read out very quickly the definition of animal. Animal includes mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, fish, other chordates and invertebrates, and also includes their young and eggs. This is very important, that the definition of animal is wide. It includes youngs and eggs as well. On the other hand, captive animal means any animal which is specified in Schedule 1, Schedule 2, Schedule 3 or Schedule 4, which is captured or kept or bred in captivity. Only then it becomes a captive animal. It is not equal to domesticated animal. It is a scheduled animal, basically any animal in Schedule 1 to 4 which is captured, and then it is considered as a captive animal. Now scheduled animal, of course, as I mentioned, any animal found in any of the schedules, in fact in Schedule 1 to 4, is a scheduled animal. Wild animal, on the other hand, means any animal specified in Schedule 1, 2, 3 or 4 and found wild in nature. So both these qualifications have to be met. They have to appear in any of the first four schedules, and they have to be found wild in nature. Only then they can be called as wild animals. Wildlife, on the other hand, the definition of wildlife is any animal, aquatic or land vegetation which forms part of any habitat. So obviously wildlife is the term that we would use most often, most commonly, because that has the most expansive definition, while the definition of wild animal are strict and captive animal are strictly within the bounds of schedules. Now another nuance is whether should we call an event where an animal has been killed hunting or poaching. Poaching is not defined. Poaching does not appear in any of in the Wildlife Act. So poaching is not the correct and hunting also has a very it includes even the intent to hunt. So for example, if I send my friend a message on WhatsApp tomorrow saying that I saw this very beautiful cheetal deer in a nearby forest, and let's try to have its meat. Now that WhatsApp message itself can be used against me as an incriminating evidence, and it qualifies as hunting. So I have engaged in hunting. Wildlife biologists, wildlife scientists, when they try to capture animals to for veterinary purposes, or even to put GPS collars and telemetry instruments, even they are engaged in hunting, and that is why they need to take a permit. And that is why I said previously that hunting is not banned, it is prohibited. So wildlife scientists, ecologists, whenever they try to capture an animal, they engage in hunting as far as the Wildlife Protection Act is concerned, which is why they have to take permission, prior approval from the Chief Wildlife Warden of the state. If it concerns a Schedule 1 animal, it is also the permission has to also be taken from the central government. Now the other thing is weapon. Weapon also has a very, very wide definition. So weapon can include guns, of course, ammunition, but it can also include bows, arrows, knives, anything that can potentially harm or damage an animal, or even perceived to cause a damage to an animal. So even if I'm carrying a Swiss knife inside a forest, I may be oblivious to the law, or I may have good intentions. I may be carrying only for my own protection, or maybe to do certain things inside the forest. But that qualifies as a weapon, and the carrying of a weapon can get you behind bars. So these are something that we should be aware of. The other thing is wild animal government property. Now this is also very interesting, and Wildlife Protection Act makes it very clear that any wild animal which is captive, which is held captive, which dies, which is injured, or which is held in someone's captivity, in someone's control, only in that case it becomes government property. So some of us, the ecologists who are listening to this presentation, they must have during their course of work come across agitated people, especially in areas where human wildlife negative interactions are many and very frequent. They would come across irate villagers who would say that your animal, or government animal, or your animal is coming into my property. So this does not apply to a free living animal as far as Wildlife Protection Act is concerned. Any free living wild animal is not government property. Registration of arms, if you reside within a 10-kilometer area of any protected area, you need to register your arms, even to the Chief Wildlife Warden. So this is prescribed under the Arms Act itself, that you need to register with the police your arms, but you also have to register it with the Chief Wildlife Warden, with the Forest Department basically, if you are residing within a 10-kilometer buffer of protected areas. This is so that any hunting incident arises, the Forest Department or the police can already have a ready list of who may have committed the offense. And this also disallows or discourages keeping arms recklessly. Teasing of wildlife. So many of us may have linear intrusion. Many linear intrusions pass through our national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. There may be cases where we have found during our work people on the highway, on such a highway passing through a national park, casually sitting at the side. They decide to bring out their cooktop and cook something, and in the process they might give some animals, give some food to animals, might even tease animals. Now all of this is a wildlife offense, because teasing of wildlife is identified as a wildlife offense. Another thing that we may have come across is tourist vehicles barging into, or cornering a tiger, let's say. It usually happens to large carnivores. So hundreds of vehicles, 50s, tens of vehicles trying to have a look at a tiger and satisfy their visitors, satisfy their customers, in their jeeps and gypsies, is it an offense? It is not explicitly mentioned in the Act, but the Act also says in its chapter for penalties, it says that anyone who does not follow the order of a designated authority or of an officer can be prosecuted. So a designated officer, let's say the Chief Wildlife Warden or the DFO, if he or she passes an order saying that only 2 or 4 gypsies can venture close to the animal at a time. Now, if that order is violated, then all persons concerned have committed an offence under the Wildlife Protection Act, and they can be prosecuted. WLPA is also a special law. You will see the term notwithstanding in front of its provisions. I mean, many of its provisions begin with the term notwithstanding. This implies that notwithstanding anything that is contained in any other law which is in force for the time being, WLPA says this. So it's a special law, and it can when it comes into conflict with other laws, the provisions of WLPA will stand out or will be considered first. One of the effects of this is that the burden of proof in Wildlife Protection Act lies on the accused. So it is contrary to normal IPC sections where the burden of proof lies on the prosecutor. Here the burden of proof lies on the accused. So if you are found with a piece of animal meat inside a sanctuary, and it has been duly recorded by the officer concerned, and photographs have been taken and stuff like that, now the burden is on you to prove that you have not committed an offense. It has already been assumed that you are guilty. Operation of other laws is not barred, but this does not mean, so WLPA may be a special law, but this does not mean that other laws are barred. For example, let's say if a female is found committing a wildlife offense, and an officer wants to search for things that may be in her possession, but there are other IPC sections with regards to decency and search and seizure. So those laws will continue to be operational. So you cannot search a female after sundown, for example. A female officer can only do that. So things like that. So operation of other laws is not totally barred. Weapon, as I said, has been we have already covered the other aspects. Now something happened during 2002 and 4 in Sariska. So we are talking about the evolution of wildlife protection law. So as we all know, international wildlife trade is second only to drugs and narcotics in the world. So illegal international wildlife trade. So this took a heavy toll, obviously, on our wildlife as well, especially since animal body parts are heavily marketed as well as sought after items in Asia. Even if we do not consider tiger parts, elephant parts, ivory and other articles, even turtles, tortoises, many species of lizards, they are kept as pets by some people in North America. Snake skin, belts made out of crocodile skin. So all of this goes on, and it took a very heavy toll, and it came out very starkly when Sariska, which was established as a tiger reserve, it was exterminated of all its tigers around 2004, and the bureaucracy was slow to act. It said that tigers exist, but when suddenly no tiger existed, it was out there in the open. So this was a huge international issue, and it was a matter of national shame as well. So the Prime Minister constituted the Tiger Task Force in 2005, which came out with its report joining the dots. Since then, Project Tiger, which we all know was established in 1973, with a focus to conserve tigers and its habitats, was replaced by a statutory body called the National Tiger Conservation Authority. This was established through an amendment in WLPA in 2006. NTCA was given charge, and it was given functions and duties to oversee tiger reserves in the country. In the same amendment, Wildlife Crime Control Bureau was also established. So we understand that there are certain big events that promulgate a change. So Sariska was one. We have already covered the Stockholm Conference in 1972. Yes. So having covered WLPA 1972, as I said, I have no intention of covering each and every section of the Act. It should not be too much for the audience because there are many legal terms involved. So I have only covered the nuances that I felt need to be conveyed. So after having covered those, there are certain shortcomings obviously in the Wildlife Protection Act. First of all is training. Now judges, forest personnel and civilians are, in fact, at least as far as judges and forest personnel are concerned, they are not fully aware of all wildlife laws, all procedures involved, the process to investigate, chain of evidence. Many people are not aware, which is why conviction rate is very low in wildlife offences. Now, of course, wildlife crime, after the establishment of WCCB, there have been efforts to compile everything in one place and make it easy for forest personnel as well as for judges to interpret the law and to make sure that all the right processes are followed. But this has been very slow, and it has been a very slow process, and it is only very slowly catching up. Many civilians, and these are some of the most impoverished communities that live around our forested areas, especially around our protected areas. So they also are mostly not aware of many stringent provisions in the Act, and it also happens that sometimes they are also harassed. So all these chinks are not of the Act itself, I would say, but it's how it is structured and how it's conveyed to people, how it is interpreted. So there is a lot of scope for training by experts in this field, which would give a fillip to the actual implementation of the law in the field. It is focused on terrestrial ecosystems, hence it has only gained mixed results for marine areas and species. So it has not been able to fully express itself as far as marine areas are concerned and marine conservation is concerned. For a long time there was no fish in the schedules. It was many fish species were introduced only later in the form of amendments. Then sea cucumbers, which was actually used, which many people use in coastal communities for their economic benefit and to sustain their livelihoods, was suddenly banned, and so people were not aware. Whoever made all sea cucumbers placed into the schedules, they were not aware of the effects that it will have. So much so that clandestine trade in sea cucumbers has become a big business. And since detection of a wildlife crime is very low, it has destroyed the livelihoods of people who were dependent on sea cucumbers. But it has ensured that a vast illegal market now exists. There is very low conviction rate because of all these factors. Species schedules are also slightly outdated, and species outside borders are not protected. So this is a very large lacuna in the law. So species outside borders are not protected as we saw in the Act itself. Animals do have a vast definition, but they are restricted to the territory of India. So none of the schedules include species that are found outside India. So migratory waterfowl that come in large numbers, they do not find place in the Wildlife Protection Act. There are other legal instruments that exist, but since WLPA is the strongest, it is worthwhile to point out that they do not find mentioned there. So with this I end the Wildlife Protection Act focused presentation. But I would just like to orally mention that there is also an Indian, as we said, Indian Board for Wildlife was established in 1952, which took the shape of National Board for Wildlife later on, and its duties. And it is fascinating to know that National Board for Wildlife, its full board consists of 47 members, which is headed by the head of executive, again by the Prime Minister. So this is also a very significant step as far as wildlife is concerned in India, that we have our Prime Minister heading our National Board for Wildlife. Unfortunately, in the last many years, the full board has not met, and the functions of the standing committee is being questioned by civil society members. It has kind of become a body for clearing projects rather than exercising advisory role on that protects wildlife. Remember the nomenclature. It is National Board for Wildlife. All its acts, all its orders, all its advisories have to be focused for the benefit of wildlife. Anyway, that is a debate for another day. So yes, with this we end this talk. Of course, the entire law and policy related to wildlife and forest is an entire semester, is an entire course in itself, and I have only tried to cover the salient features and certain nuances of the Wildlife Act for a very general audience in the short time that I was provided. So I once again thank Dr. Shiv Kumar for giving me this opportunity, for Amir for coordinating this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rohit. So you can just turn off your share screen. Right?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Rohit. So I will request you to stay put. So we will just move towards our coordinator, sir. So, sir, Dr. Shivakumar maybe have some things to say also, and then we'll come back to you. We might have some questions.
Yes, sure.
Over to you, sir. Sir, you are not audible, sir. It's mute.
Yeah. Now I'm audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. First, let me thank such a wonderful talk by Mr. Rohit. Super, very nicely explained the law in a very simpler term. Excellent. Good morning, everybody. Once again, we wish you all a very happy Wildlife Week. All of you know that every year we mark the birthday of our great Mahatma Gandhi. We start our Wildlife Week celebration because Mahatma believed on conserving biodiversity, conserving a nature, and he believed on peace and ahimsa and non-violence. To mark his birthday, we celebrate, and this year very unique for us because the entire country was celebrating the Wildlife Week in a big manner. Whether it is initiated by our Government of India Ministry of Environment and Forest, by our honorable ministers at the ministry, and then followed by various institutions, whether it's a government or a non-government or university, college, everybody was celebrating this Wildlife Week. So the awareness is created, and then with this, the Wildlife Institute of India always in the front for to conserve and protect our wildlife. We also thought of doing it from our part. What we did is, we started with one unknown or less or ignored group of biodiversity, that is a marine biodiversity. As rightly Mr. Rohit mentioned today, even that law doesn't support the marine biodiversity. So that's what we started to create awareness among the people about the importance of conservation of marine biodiversity. We too get some livelihood from marine biodiversity because we believe that the future of livelihood lies in the marine ecosystem for humankind. But we have to conserve them now. Then only the future generation will get benefited out of that. That is the reason we started with the marine program, and then followed by, we packed with a series of talk, thanks to my ENVIS team led by Amir Lord and Jyoti and Tripti Kosh. The excellent plan, they plan it, that is telling something about certain takes, and then talking about people's role, and then knows about our rights, that is the law, and then thinking overall the planet. So accordingly, they come up with a talk like Dr. Anant Pandey initiated this webinar with talking about Antarctica. There's another continent, the beautiful continent, highly vulnerable to the climate change. But we have to, as a global community, we should take care of that system. Because the Wildlife Week celebration, India always believe on the global work. So we want to say that because India has been concerned about the Antarctica environment, global environment, we always in a pro-conservation in all the global forum. So that is the reason that India is doing a lot of work, and we thought of creating some kind of awareness among our listeners about Antarctica, or Indian Antarctica program. And Anant is the better person because he was the first Indian who could do a PhD on Antarctica wildlife. So that's we started, and then we can't talk everything about Indian habitat. So we initiated some of the natural heritage sites in India by Ms. Pallavi. It's an excellent talk on the natural heritage sites which we have it in our country. And then we want to address something about the wildlife. When we talk about the wild animals, we can't talk everything. So we choose in the birds because birds are there everywhere. They are beautiful. One can see from their backyard. So that's what we want to give some kind of a message to the people that let us take care of the wildlife using a birds taxa. That was an excellent talk made by Mr. Sipu Kumar on the frugivore birds. And then people, the conservation mean for the people. People should get benefited out of any kind of conservation. Otherwise, why should we conserve it? Okay, whether it's a current generation or a future generation. But we normally work for a future generation should get more benefit, and the current generation, of course, will get benefited. So people and wildlife, the challenge and opportunity by Mr. Aritra Chetis, but there was well-received talk by him. So we addressed that. And then finally today, as I mentioned already, Mr. Rohit Jha, given that because one has to know the rules of law, because it's very important, and what is our rights, how can we help the wildlife conservation, what are the kind of policies are there. Then he chosen the Wildlife Protection Act. As he mentioned, Indian Wildlife Protection Act is one of the strictest act available all over the world with respect to protecting or conserving the wildlife. Of course, there are certain shortcomings that needs to be addressed in that. So what we can say that the entire country is celebrating from the ENVIS Center on behalf of the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India and Wildlife Institute of India. Once again, we wish you all a very happy Wildlife Week, and try your best to do something for conserving our nature. Even if you don't even waste your food, that itself a great contribution to wildlife conservation. Not necessary that you have to go to forest area and protect the wildlife. You can do it at our home and avoid plastic, don't put a garbage, don't waste a food, help others. So that's all enough. That's all more than enough for any citizens to do something for a conservation, and try to minimize your carbon footprint wherever, whatever you are doing it. So these are the small things we can contribute to the conservation of the biodiversity. So with this, I will end, and we thank you all for your participation. I thank all the resource persons. Especially I thank my team, Mr. Amir Lone and his colleague. Over to Mr. Amir.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for your wonderful comments, sir. You have always been a great support to our team and to WLPA in particular. So there's a lot to do, and we have to get together to find solutions. I have recently heard about, there was a talk yesterday, and there was the guy, he said that every problem is a solution in the making. So we have to get together and look out for the solutions. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. And we'll move forward to our questions. And let's see if we have any questions for Rohit. Yeah, Rohit, so we don't have any questions as of now, but there is this comment. Sonal is saying, she's saying that you have been good. It was a good presentation. So
Thank you.
yeah, should we wait for some time, or we can just?
Yes, we can wait.
Yeah, if you have anything else to say, then yeah, please go ahead.
Yes. In the meanwhile, I would like to just continue with what Dr. Shiv Kumar also said, that all of us have to do our bit, and but the most important interventions and contributions have to come from our governments, be it state government, central government, our leaders basically, and that is where the largest push can come, and that is where the largest effect can happen, action can happen. So that is one thing, and it has been observed that we are slightly regressing as far as environmental protection is concerned as a nation. Of course, this is debatable and arguable, but what I'm saying is that civil society needs to play a greater role in ensuring that our governments are up to the task, and in this era of climate change and worsening natural disasters and biodiversity crisis, we have to make sure that our democratic participation does not end at the ballot itself, but it continues in pressuring our governments to do the right thing always, especially in the realm of wildlife and conservation.
We still don't have any questions, Rohit. So I guess that we'll just move ahead then.
Yes.
So yeah, thank you very much, Rohit, for an interesting talk. It was an in-depth dive in the wildlife laws and policies, and we talk about history and policies. What were the turning points in our laws and policies related to the environment, governance, and wildlife? So, and you talked about the present constitutional framework as well. And you spoke about the Wildlife Protection Act 1972 in depth. What was before it and how it progressed. And as you said, that there were these 5 national parks, and we are now at 981 protected areas we have in our country.
Yes.
And this is how this law has evolved and helped the wildlife conservation in particular. So yeah, this brings us to the end of this webinar series. It has been a fantastic week for all of us. And on behalf of ENVIS Resource Partner, Wildlife Institute of India, I would like to thank our speaker, Mr. Rohit Jha, and our previous speakers, Dr. Anand Pandey, Ms. Pallavi Chakrabarti, Mr. C.P. Kumar, and Mr. Aditya Khetri. And this webinar would have not been possible without the support of our coordinator, Dr. C.P. Kumar, my ENVIS team, Ms. Tripti Ghosh and Mr. Jyoti Notial, our IT support, especially Mr. Dinesh Pundirji. In the end, I would like to thank Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change of India, Director Wildlife Institute of India, Dehradun, for their constant support. And I express my sincere gratitude to the people who have been with us since the start of the series by joining us online. And those of you who couldn't join us can still go and watch these videos on our YouTube channel, and these are all there. And the registered participants who I have just put up this in the chat box also. You can fill up your feedback form, and you will get the certificates from us very soon in your emails. And I wish you all the very best, and please stay safe and take care. And that's it from my side. This is Amir here, signing off. Thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.